Formula One on 5 Live.
Formula One returns to Sin City for the second edition of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. The sun has set, the lights have come on to illuminate this Las Vegas Strip circuit, just over 6 kilometres long, this fast street track which races past some of the most iconic landmarks in the world. From the Eiffel Tower, the Statue of Liberty, Caesar's Palace, the Bellagio, and more modern additions such as the Sphere. What's happening here this weekend, though, certainly won't stay here, because we have a title still to settle in the Drivers' Championship and Constructors, but it's the Drivers' Championship. It's Max Verstappen's first opportunity to claim his 4th world title. And to find out if he can do it and to guide you through all of the sessions this weekend is myself, Harry Benjamin, racing driver Alice Powell, the BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson are up in the commentary box with me, but our eyes and ears on the ground. It's the one and only Rosanna Tennant. Good evening, Rosanna.
Good evening, Harry. Yes, you can hear the music is blaring down here in the pit lane as the teams and drivers are getting ready for that first practice session. And as you said, the sun has set. It has got a little bit chilly, I'm not going to lie. It's about 11 degrees down here in the pit lane, but it's not quite as cold as it got down to last night. It was 4 degrees, wasn't it, last night? Very chilly. And if you look around the pit lane, there are a few beanies, a few bobble hats, a few gloves appearing, and quite a few puffer jackets. So it's going to be chilly. That is going to add an extra challenge to the weekend as a whole. Tyres are starting to go on, though. We are getting closer to the start of this practice session. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they have bolted those water valves down, Harry.
Well, aren't we all? I didn't have the pleasure of witnessing that last year in person, but I know it did lead to some rather lengthy delays. But I'm sure for this weekend they have been firmly put in place. But we're just a few minutes away then from getting FP1 underway. It's just coming up to 6:30 local time. And Alice, I mean, the big topic coming into this weekend is surrounding the Drivers' Championship. It is Max Verstappen's first opportunity to win the title after a spectacular race in Sao Paulo, coming from 17th on the grid to win in those chaotic conditions. If he's to win the title here under the lights, it would be something special, wouldn't it?
It will. It definitely will. And what a party Max may decide to have in Las Vegas, or he might hop on his private jet and head straight to Qatar. But no, what a drive, firstly, from Max last time out. Incredible stuff. I know people say, well, it's a leveller, isn't it, when it rains? Car doesn't matter. Well, in that case, his drive was even better because he stormed through the field. Yes, he had a little bit of luck. Lando, of course, touched on the luck during his post-race interview in Brazil, but sensational stuff. And I think he is a worthy winner of the title this year. He gets his elbows out, controversial sometimes, but he ultimately has been the fastest driver, and he's not always had the best car this season. The McLaren's certainly been up there, the Ferrari too. Those two I think will be particularly strong round here. Charles Leclerc was on pole last time out here. He got beaten by Max Verstappen and had a great battle between him and the Ferrari. He was a little bit unlucky with the safety car, but it's a great circuit. Hopefully, as Rosanna said, we're going to keep those drain covers bolted down, and there's always a buzziness about it, but I don't feel like it's as buzzy as it was last year. It certainly seems like there's less people around, but the drivers seem a little bit happier because they've not had to do this show that was put on last year. So Max certainly seems a little bit happier.
Well, it really is, this place, quite an assault on the senses, isn't it? You know, especially at night, as we can see as the drivers are sat in their cockpits getting ready for the green light. But all it takes, as we look at our TV screens, the helicopter shots and the drones up above that showcase just the ferociousness of this circuit, lit up not only by the lights surrounding it, but also all the neon signs down the strip. Indeed, the track starts in what is essentially a former parking lot, hurtles down to turn one before you chuck it into the left, and then you head down Koval Lane, the first straight that we get to before a slow 90-degree turn. It is fast round here, and it is that back straight down the Las Vegas Strip. That is unique, one of a kind. It's almost 2 kilometers long. You're getting up to 350 kilometers an hour in a street in Las Vegas. That is incredible for Formula One to be doing.
It is, but it's tough for the drivers, in particular with these cold conditions. It's expected to drop quite later on when we get to free practice 2, and certainly for the race and qualifying over the next couple of days. But that doesn't help with the tyre temperatures, and it's going to be so critical this weekend to warm up these tyres properly, especially the front axle. That's going to be the hardest to warm up. Push too early when the tyres aren't warm and you get cold graining, and that can be so hard. It's virtually impossible then to get the tyres back, so that will result in less grip, and certainly for the race the tyre life will be reduced. And that long straight that you were talking about, Harry, unless you're weaving left, right to try and keep that temperature, the temperature's going to drop, and then you've got heavy braking zone into turn 14. Have a lock up there, and that's going to damage the tyre and also reduce the surface temperature as well.
Cars out on track then, and we are underway for free practice 1. And for those who are staying up late with us, how about a sync for your troubles? It's 59 minutes and 8, 7, 6 seconds remain as the sphere built last year for the Grand Prix is illuminated in red with all of the team names on them as the cars head out onto the circuit. Oscar Piastri leads the way in the McLaren, first out of the pits. So too is Gasly, the 2 Saubers of Joe and Bottas, Ocon, Colapinto, Magnussen, Lawson, the 2 Ferraris next out, and Lando Norris in the McLaren has just made his way out through turn 1 as well. Las Vegas is very much lit up by lights, but certainly the sound of Las Vegas this evening is now very much Formula 1 cars out on circuit for their first taste of the track action this weekend. Rosanna.
That sound you heard just then was Max Verstappen, soft tyres on the Red Bull, and he's followed down the pit lane by George Russell in the Mercedes. He's gone for the medium tyres, so a little bit of difference already appearing as the drivers head out into the pit lane. That sound there, that's Lewis Hamilton. Woo, giving it full beans as he headed down the pit lane, medium as well for the other Mercedes driver. Good to see him in the car, guys. I don't know about you, but there was that strange radio message at the end of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix where he almost started to sort of say goodbye and a thank you to the team, but he's here. He said he's got his shoulders back, his head up high, and he's standing strong and ready for these last 3 races with Mercedes before heading over to Ferrari next year.
Yeah, it was certainly an on one, wasn't it? And there's a lot of farewells being kicked off this triple header. We then head to Qatar next week before we finish up the finale 24 races later in Abu Dhabi. The Eiffel Tower lit up in red, white and blue. The fountains that align this parts of this circuit performing nicely, and Max Verstappen carving his way through the field, making his way now towards the left-hander of turn 12.
Feels like I'm driving in the wet, honestly.
So last year, I know we had the stoppage in free practice 1, but 1:40.9 was the lap time that was produced. When they took to qualifying, 1:32. And the main comment from drivers was it's just so slippy, and as you heard there from Liam Lawson, it is so slippy. The track's just going to get better and better, and the car is how long? The track's probably been shut for 3-4 hours, I would say, because we went for a walk, didn't we, as a team, went for a wander, and the traffic was still flowing down the strip as we are on board with Liam Lawson. He's got a little bit of traffic ahead, and you can see just trying to get a bit of space from one another, but also using the brakes to try and get those tyres up to temperature. So important to try and heat the tyres from the inside out. If you get the surface temperature warm too quickly, then you can destroy the tyre. And it looks like Sainz was trying to make his way past one of the McLarens there as well.
Yeah, Franco Colapinto was one of the cars in front of Liam Lawson in the Williams. Verstappen then embarking on his first lap. The sparks absolutely flying from the underside of that Red Bull. And Andrew Benson, BBC's F1 correspondent, if I may bring you in for this one, as Verstappen does indeed hurdle his way around the left-hander, almost touching 300 kilometres an hour before he slams on the brake. This is the first weekend possible for Max Verstappen to claim that 4th world title. You sat down with him already this week. You'll be able to read that on the BBC Sport website in full and hear it on 5 Live later on this evening, Friday UK time in the evening, and throughout the Checkered Flag podcast. What have you gleaned from Max coming into this weekend? We know he can handle pressure. It's not his first world title, but how are your impressions of him coming into Vegas?
Well, he was just so relaxed, Harry. We spoke for about 20 minutes or so, and I asked him absolutely everything that you could imagine that you would want to ask him about, the off-track shenanigans at Red Bull this year, the championship, the dispute over his racing tactics, People will remember from a couple of races ago. And he was just so straightforward. I've never heard... The most interesting bit for me was the talking about how he races. He's not really addressed that criticism so far when he's been asked about it after the various races. It's like he wanted to keep it away. But we talked about it for quite some time, and he was very open about how he views racing. Basically, the lead line, we didn't lead the story on this, but for me it was basically him saying, I don't let anybody overtake me around the outside, which is, we kind of knew from watching him for the last 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it is. But to hear him absolutely say that's the way he views it, you are not coming past around the outside, that's it. It really puts some clarity on the way he approaches things. But you can see why he's so successful in many ways. Obviously, it's a mental game as well as a physical game. Formula One, nothing seems to faze him. He's quite remarkable like that, and that's exactly how he was yesterday.
Just heard, he had a yellow flag out momentarily. It's green again just for Piastri running across at turn 7. Indeed, Charles Leclerc almost going the same way, clipping a little bit of the curb as he tried to make the corner as well. It is slippy out there, low grip conditions. Just in terms of those tyres, Pirelli bringing the softest in the range that they have, the C3 hard, the C4 medium and the C5 soft. In terms of, though, Alice, I suppose the pecking order this weekend, what are you expecting to see?
I'm expecting our usual culprits, so that would be McLaren up the front. I think Ferrari have a very good chance of winning here this weekend. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, and I wouldn't necessarily rule out Mercedes either. This should be a smoother track for them, long straights. Low downforce will be on all of these cars, and quite a few, actually majority of the teams have altered their front wing to just reduce sort of the downforce level, so it can compensate and help with the aero balance. So I think we're going to have a really, really interesting weekend. But Lando, he needs to beat Max Verstappen. And remember, this time last year, his Grand Prix was cut very, very short as he went into the wall on the exit of turn 11. And I'm just looking at the pictures, and the track is so dusty. The riding on board with Fernando Alonso, he's having to eke so gently onto the throttle. And the two Ferraris we saw in a replay, Harry, both sailed off. I think that was down at turn 7 and 8. And they were just tiptoeing around. It's just so dusty out there as Oscar Piastri comes through, the white flag out to just alert drivers that there's a slower moving car on track. But you can just see that there's just no grip out there at all. 1:42.590 is the fastest time at the moment, and that's set by George Russell.
It is indeed half a tenth clear of Kevin Magnussen, then it's Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Tsunoda's just popped up to 7th, then it's Norris, Joe and Alonso at the top 10, still waiting for lap times from Piastri, Ocon and Gasly. We have got a yellow flag out that has gone back to green now, so we haven't seen what's happened there, so perhaps another driver just running wide and cutting a corner or two. Lando Norris has just popped himself up to 5th fastest in the McLaren. Norris has sounded in some interviews a little bit dejected, hasn't he, after Sao Paulo. He is still in championship contentions, but just so you know the permutations for this weekend, if Max Verstappen finishes ahead of Lando Norris at the end of the Grand Prix, Max Verstappen will be champion. The only way Lando Norris can keep it going till Qatar is that Norris must outscore Verstappen by at least 3 points to keep things rolling on to next weekend in Qatar. So this is a tough ask. It does feel like the writing is on the wall, though you can never say never. But how have you felt Lando Norris's last few races have been? The momentum has been with McLaren almost, but Red Bull and Verstappen are fighting back after a fallow period in the middle of the season. It's been a brilliant fight to watch for all of us, but it feels like we could have had this go down to the very wire.
Yeah, I think Max has just been a bit more ruthless, hasn't he? That's always been his approach. We saw it in the battles with Lewis Hamilton back in 2021. He's just ruthless, and I think Lando didn't necessarily, and he's actually admitted that he didn't expect to come into this year as title contenders and in a title fight. But he's an experienced driver. He's a fast racer. He's a race winner in whatever category he's raced in, whether it been in karting or all the way up through through the ranks as he just goes slightly wide. Well, I think he was actually moving out the way for cars behind down at turn 15. But yeah, he of course is going to be really disappointed with not coming out as a champion. Once you get on that roll, and since Miami really, he's had some really good results. He got his first win there earlier on in the year, but with a little bit of bad luck and maybe some wrong calls from McLaren's side, those were crucial points that have been dropped. And I hope that we will see him and Oscar, because I think Oscar actually is certainly on par with Lando in terms of driving ability, and some say he could be even better than Lando. So I think heading into next year we'll certainly have a good fight on our hands. Of course the teams can develop their car, but certainly McLaren have been stronger towards the end of this year. But yeah, in the press conference, Lando certainly was a bit defeated, wasn't he? And I think he's admitting defeat. He's being realistic as we're riding on board with him now. He's on the medium compound of tyre, fastest of anybody in the first sector.
Making his way into the left-hander of turn 12, now embarks down that long back straight, personal best in the middle sector. Still waiting on lap times though for his teammate Piastri, and also the two Alpines of Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. They are now out on the track, and off the back of an amazing result, a double podium for them. Rosanna, I think you're outside Alpine now.
I am. Both drivers have just headed out. A little bit of work going on Pierre Gasly's car. They were taking the aero rakes off the car, so all fine there if you're perhaps watching a screen as well and wondering what was going on. But I tell you what, guys, it is so dusty down here. You can really see the dust in the air as well because the lights are illuminating the circuit. Super dusty in the pit lane, and as I look out across the start-finish straight, the lights are also illuminating the fact that the grandstand is quite empty. Not that many fans here for this first practice session. We did have questions, didn't we, about how ticket sales were going. You kind of just expect this one to sell out every day.
Well, it was interesting. As you say, there were a lot of questions. I was actually in our hotel walking here, was just behind a couple of gentlemen from America who were discussing about how they had seen online that there was still tickets available for this evening's practice sessions, only going for about $40 or $50,
Can I come in?
to quote them. So certainly, perhaps it's not the sellout they imagined, but it is, I suppose, Rosanna, Friday practice, so we can see this build up and up, and this is prime time to be in the casinos.
Hope they didn't think it was Friday practice, Harry, because it's Thursday.
Oh no!
Isn't it, here in
I've
Vegas?
fallen for it. I've fallen
already.
for it.
Do you know what? I have been told they sold 800 tickets today for the session, so, every little helps. I've also been told that they were at 96% capacity. They've got sell-out for Saturday for the race. Of course, again, we've just got to remind ourselves we're racing on Saturday night here instead of the usual traditional Sunday Grand Prix spot. And they think they'll probably average out at about 98% occupancy. I sound like I'm selling hotel rooms, don't I? But we'll wait and see. But at the moment, perhaps the guests are enjoying a little glass of champagne, or I don't know, burger, steak, something elsewhere, and perhaps they'll come and have a little look at what's going on later on for FP2 maybe, but you never know.
Well, Rosanna, I want you to be counting every single person in the grandstands throughout the practice session.
She can only count to 10.
If we're talking exact percentiles for capacity, then we've got to back up the numbers here.
You've set me my first challenge. Off I go.
Thank you, Rosanna. We'll see you in a few hours. Thank you very much, Rosanna. We will come back to you before then. 46 minutes, 15, 14, 13 seconds remain. Hamilton is fastest on the medium tyre, 1:38.1, 1.3 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen, who is out there on the soft tyre. Again, though, so difficult to get a real proper idea of the pecking order right now. The track gripping up all of the time. Open to the public until only a few hours ago with road cars going around. We have very, very little to none in terms of support racing here as well, rubbering up the track from session to session. So that will affect things too, as one of the Aston Martins, I think it was Fernando Alonso, just coming into the pit lane, and as soon as he deviates off the racing line into the pit lane, you enter a plume of dust. We were talking about the Alpine drivers with Rosanna. They are both out on the track now. Pierre Gasly has made his way up into 18th, Ocon down in 20th. But Alice, you're not Rosanna. Alice next to me, Alice Power racing driver, but also part of helping develop the young Alpine Academy members. It must have been an absolutely amazing result, both at the track and at the team in Enstone and Biri after the, let's face it, shock podium in Sao Paulo.
Yeah, safe to say it certainly was a shock to everybody. But they did a fantastic job, both drivers. I was looking at Guan Yu Zhou having a really large lock-up down into turn 14 and the outside front tyre, which is unusual, blocking up over the bumps. But no, it was a great job by every single member of the team, and something that the team really needed in what's been a hugely disappointing year for the outfit and for the team. The academy is thriving, but the F1 team has certainly struggled. So certainly what they needed. Big celebrations, of course. The trophies are sat very proudly at the front of reception back at Enstone. They're expecting a bit of a tougher weekend here in Vegas. They had a strong result here in the race last year, but they're certainly not expecting to replicate the weekend of Sao Paulo, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, with that result, though, in Sao Paulo, second and third, Alpine rocketed up to 6th in the championship, 49 points to their name. They're 3 clear of the Haas team. Then comes RB, and there's only 5 points separating those 3 teams in the battle for 6th in the Constructors. So that will mean a lot to but all of those teams fighting for that. And I think if I were Haas or an RB, I know you have an Alpine hat on, but if I were Haas or RB, I'd be pretty miffed at that. Out of nowhere, a double podium that sees your hard work and consistency throughout the year almost undermined. But I suppose that's Formula One.
Exactly, took the words right out of my mouth. That is Formula One. Things can change so quickly, and everyone's of course saying, I am one of those, that Max Verstappen is certainly going to win the championship. I don't think it's necessarily going to be this weekend. But who knows? Things can change so quickly as we're riding on board with the potential 4th World Championship driver that's going to add to his belt.
Late. My God.
Frustration with some traffic that was getting in the way there, and we're looking at a replay, and he's going to get ever so close to the wall on the outside as well. And actually, look at the amount of dust that's being kicked up, Harry, from running ever so close to the wall. It's quite busy out on circuit. Majority of drivers, all bar Lando Norris, Bottas, as well as Stroll and Zhou are out on circuit. Esteban Ocon cuts the timing beam. He jumps up on the medium tyre into P10, but still 3 seconds off the pace. And at the top of the times at the moment is Hamilton and Russell, so they're looking particularly strong. Verstappen, I would expect maybe a little bit more from him. He's on the soft tyre, but of course he's had a little bit of traffic, so had to abandon his lap.
Yeah, I think that radio message was referencing one of the Williams cars. I think it might have been Alex Albon in the Williams. Franco Colapinto's in the pits in the other car. And we should say a remarkable job from Williams. A few rumours going around that they were struggling to even be able to make it here with a fully complete car, let alone 2, after 2 big shunts, both for Alex Albon and Franco Colapinto in Sao Paulo, one for Albon in qualifying and Colapinto in the race. So they have managed to get both cars fixed, both here and both up to the same spec, so with the upgrades on that they introduced over the last few races. So equal spec for Williams, and what it will be crucial because they have lost a little bit of ground to the battle for 6th ahead of them. They are ahead of Sauber, who sit plumb last. There is of course that battle for the Constructors' Championship right at the top. McLaren lead the way, 36 points clear of Ferrari. It feels like it's a 2-horse race in the Constructors' Championship, with Red Bull a little bit adrift down in 3rd. But a few moments ago we saw Alonso coming into the pits. We're hearing some issues perhaps for the Aston Martin team. Rosanna, do you know any more?
Well, Alonso's in, Harry, but he looks fine. If I look across to the left-hand side of the garage, Lance Stroll's car is up high on the jacks. He's still in the car, and the last radio message I heard him say to his team was, am I okay to keep pushing? And he was told, yeah, absolutely fine. Anyway, he's come in. He's up on the jacks, as I say, and the mechanics are trying to make a bit of a barrier so that we can't see what is going on. So I will have a little investigation
and
find out more
Rosanna.
for you. Yeah, let me in, guys. Come on, if you need a helping hand, I'm ready to assist. But yeah, not looking good for Lance Stroll at the moment. His teammate Fernando Alonso is in, but it doesn't look like they're experiencing any problems on his side of the garage.
Good run for both Aston Martins this time last year. Of course, it's a very different situation they find themselves in. They've really lost their way and gone backwards when it comes to finding development. And actually, Andrew, if I bring you in on this, it's worth pointing out we had it was a big news week last week, wasn't it, in the build-up to Vegas? And one of those big breaking stories was Dan Fallows at Aston Martin stepping down as F1 technical director. Is that a direct result of the poor performance that Aston Martin have found themselves having this year?
Well, let's just be clear about our terminology, because the phrase step down is being used quite a lot in Formula 1 at the moment, and most of the time it means sacked. Now, Dan Fallows hasn't been sacked. He's still part of Aston Martin. He's moved across to Aston Martin Performance Technologies, which is like their kind of sort of high-tech affiliation company. But it's not a surprise on one level, because, you know, basically Dan Fallows turned up and basically designed Aston Martin a Red Bull last year, and they were the second fastest car for the first half or so. The squeaking, by the way, that you can just hear is Max Verstappen running off at the end of the long straight on the strip. He's still on those soft tyres and still hasn't done a fast lap on them, so it doesn't seem, Alice, like he's having a particularly good time. But anyway, so Dan Fallows, basically, last year they started really well, and then they couldn't develop the car through the year. Alonso did produce one brilliant result at the end of the season in Brazil. People may remember holding off Sergio Perez's Red Bull for 15 laps and then re-passing him when he finally got overtaken right at the end of the race. But they fell away, and this year they started less competitively than last year, but still decent. You know, they were qualifying 3rd, 4th, 5th, that sort of area for Alonso at the start of the season. But again, they've fallen off in terms of development, and you can't afford to keep that sort of pattern of performance in Formula 1 as technical director and not expect something to happen to you. And something has happened to Dan Fallows. He's been removed. So on that level, it is not a surprise. The level it does surprise me on is that Dan Fallows worked extremely closely with Adrian Newey at Red Bull for a very long time, all the way through their successful era from 2010 to 13 with Sebastian Vettel, and beyond that, when they still had a very good car in the beginning of the hybrid era, but the Renault engine wasn't up to snuff. Now, basically, Newey did the designs, and Fallows sort of translated them into carbon fibre, was the way it's been put by someone that I know who's a very high-level engineer in Formula 1. So you would think that they'd want Fallows to stick around for Adrian Newey's arrival at the beginning of next year, but they've got rid of him. So that's the aspect of it that surprises me. Having said that, they do have a lot of high-level technical people in that team that they've recruited in recent months, and there is a budget cap, and only the top 3 highest earners are included in that cap. Excluded from the cap. And I know that Dan Fallows went from Red Bull to Aston Martin on a salary of about £1 million, which was a massive increase on what he was earning as head of aerodynamics at Red Bull. And they've obviously decided the bang for buck is not good enough with Dan Fallows, and that's a large part of the reason for why he has been moved aside.
Thank you very much, Andrew Benson.
If you wanted me to finish the step down comedy point.
Oh, yeah. Oh, please do.
I wasn't going to.
Are you going into FIA territory?
Yeah, that's basically 2 people. Niels Wittig, the race director, had been removed between Brazil and this weekend. He was said to have stepped down, but he then went and told a German journalist that he'd been fired, and then he told me the same thing. So the FIA haven't responded to that. And then subsequent to that, the FIA compliance officer, a guy called Paolo Bassari, has also been fired. So lots of things happening at the FIA, and the drivers are very much unhappy about it, which people can read about on the BBC Sport website, basically calling the decision to replace the race director 3 races before the end of the season weird in Max Verstappen's phraseology, and similar descriptions have been employed by most of his colleagues.
Should just say that replacing Niels Wittig as race director till the end of the season is a man called Rui Marquez, who won't be known to many, but he has been doing the exact same job, but in Formula 2 and Formula 3, the support category. So certainly knows the ins and outs of how top-level motorsport works. But when you are put into a much more demanding role, a higher level role, with just a few races left, it does seem like a tall order, and a lot of things going on in the background there. In the last few moments, while we've been chatting about that, a lot of action out on track. Perez managed to put in a lap time on the soft tyre. Both Red Bulls running on that soft, 1:38.2. Verstappen did finish a lap finally, but it's still only enough for 8th, down 1:38.4. We also were mentioning issues about possibly at Aston Martin or Lance Stroll's side of the garage. Let's check back in with Rosanna. We've got an update there.
We certainly do. Lance Stroll is back out on track, and I had a chat with Aston Martin and they told me that it was planned setup and test item changes, some aero items being changed on Stroll's car. So he's back out, medium tyres for him, so all good there. And I've just been watching Oscar Piastri. He's come in, stopped in the box, and the mechanics were trying to work something out inside the cockpit.
If you're not hearing that, that was just Oscar Piastri saying the car won't turn off.
Yeah, that's what I think the mechanics were trying to help with. It's still going as Yuki Tsunoda goes past in the fast lane in the RB. Still going. They are pushing it back. Mechanics are pushing it back into the garage now, and everyone, as you can imagine, is gathering round. Photographers, cameramen, reporters like me, trying to get a glimpse of what's going on. But yeah, strange one. The car is still going. Not ideal. Obviously, these cars are incredibly dangerous with all of the electrical systems. So hopefully there's some sort of plug that they can... here we go. Quiet. There we are. It's off. Strange one. Just like that. Magic.
And there is indeed a swarm of reporters who just spotted you there, Rosanna, outside of the McLaren garage. Piastri now rolled back in. 33 minutes and 40 seconds remain. Hamilton, Russell, Leclerc, the top three. Then it's Sainz. Esteban Ocon has got himself up into 5th. Perez 6th, ahead of Gasly. Piastri in the pits, but 8th fastest ahead of Verstappen. Norris rounds out the top 10. Then it's Kevin Magnussen ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in 11th and 12th, followed by Fernando Alonso, Hülkenberg and Bottas round out the top 15. Then it's Liam Lawson. The two Williams drivers of Alex Albon and Franco Colapinto are 17th and 18th, with Lance Stroll down in 19th. And 20th and last is the Sauber driver, Zhou Guanyu. Now, Alice, why are... and you may not know the inner workings of Red Bull's strategy for this FP1 session, but Perez and Verstappen both out there on the soft tyre from the very start, but not finding huge chunks of time as we would expect.
No, I'm guessing it's data collecting. So they have got 8 sets of soft tyres available to them, 3 sets of medium and 2 sets of hard tyres. Those are the only drivers that are on, as you said, Harry, the soft tyre. Everyone else electing to go on a medium tyre. So I'm guessing a bit of data collecting, as we hear from George.
The pit entry line is almost impossible to see.
Yeah, understood.
Now, we saw an onboard whilst we were down with Rosanna of Alex Albon crossing the pit entry line, and with the race director's note. So our new race director, in the notes, you must not cross the pit entry line. You have to be fully to the inside of it before you approach it. And actually, I agree, because it was so hard for me to spot, and we're above the driver's head on the TV camera, but they're sat very, very low. And George, yeah, it almost blends in, but it does blend in with some road markings on the track. So they're going to have to either stick something out from the Armco so the drivers can see it, or try and get rid of some of the road markings there to make it much easier for the drivers to see. But George is back into the garage now, Harry?
Certainly is. To just say, we saw the other Williams, Franco Colapinto, on the race director's naughty list for the moment, being noted for crossing that pit entry line as well. So a couple of the drivers then finding that a little tricky. A lot of drivers locking up these tyres as well. And what I always find interesting, Alison, when you're racing at night, you've got these huge bright lights. Sometimes the visibility can almost be better than if it's standard daylight. But what are they doing with the helmet and the visor types that they wear?
So majority of the drivers have bell helmets. Schubert is ran by the Red Bull drivers, or Yuki's got an Arai. Each one of those helmet manufacturers will have at least 2 or 3 people come to attend to tend to the helmets of the drivers, whether it be changing the air vents that are on the top. They clean the helmet for the driver, whether the driver says, actually, it's not quite comfortable on my forehead or my left cheek or whatever. So they're there to make these crucial adjustments, and at the same time they're there to provide the driver with a variety of visors. So whether it's your full tint visor, they wouldn't be using that today certainly, but they'll have like a light tint visor, and we saw a close-up earlier on of Lando Norris, and you can just about see his eyes through the light tint of the visor. So some drivers will have different preferences. Some will want a slightly darker one. I know some drivers in junior categories that like to just drive a lot of the time if it's not sunny with a clear visor. So yeah, it is driver preference, but certainly in these conditions that they will use sort of a lighted tint visor. But certainly, especially from that sphere, it's so bright, and I'm sure last year the drivers complained a little bit about the brightness of the sphere, because when you do go into that section of track, it is hugely bright. 1.2 million LED panels on the sphere. Guess how much it costs to build the sphere, Harry? A bit of trivia for you.
$1 million per panel?
$2.3 billion.
Oh, okay, I'm far off, yeah. 2.3 billion. Wow. And we've had a little look around it, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
Just to get the lay of the land.
It's very impressive.
It is an impressive... Vegas is just such a unique place. I can't quite get my head around it at the moment. I still haven't got the lay of the land, because you're constantly walking through hotels and up on bridges to cross on one side of the road. Of course, a lot of the roads are being closed off for the track, which doesn't help, but it is a bit of a discombobulating place.
It's so easy to get lost. It's either that, or we follow producer Paddy too much, because he thinks he knows where he's going, where he doesn't. So, but it is hard to make your way around here. There's lots of casinos in majority of the hotels, as Fernando Alonso sails ahead of turn 14, has a lockup. A lot of drivers really struggling to get the car stopped. It's still really dusty down there, and it's actually almost like there's a dry line. So, you know, when it's wet, and certainly through this section of track that Valtteri Bottas is heading through now, you've got almost a much cleaner line, and then either side of that is extremely dusty. And the onboard that we're looking at is looking at Valtteri Bottas, and he has gone for the quite light tinted visor. You can almost see his eyes focusing on apex to apex as he comes around now to start a flying lap, down in 17th. At the moment, 3.4 seconds off the pace of Lewis Hamilton at the top.
I'm going to defend producer Paddy. He raced us out of the hotel onto the strip so fast today on the way to the...
he does walk very quickly.
We were both going to the Bellagio for different reasons, weren't we? Whereas yesterday, Harry, I'm not completely convinced that you always knew where you were going when you were taking us to the Sphere.
Absolutely. Well, but did we get there or not?
In the end, yes.
I think walking through the Venetian car park is an absolute must when you come to Las Vegas.
It's all glamour.
It's all glamour, this Formula One
smell.
business. 27 minutes and 10 seconds. Let's get back to a bit of Formula One chatter proper, shall we? A bit of work going down in the Mercedes garage. Rosanna, what have you got?
And make that plural, garages. Lots of work going on at the back of George Russell's car. The engine covers come off. They've been, I'm going to say, fiddling around at the back of his car.
Technical term.
Yeah, absolutely. You can quote me. And in Lewis Hamilton's garage, we've had the front of the car off, and they've been making some changes to the front suspension. So, interesting. We were saying that Mercedes shouldn't be written out of this weekend. Cooler temperatures may well suit them. Not such a bumpy track necessarily, as long as all of those water valve covers don't pop up. So maybe just making a few adjustments to how the car handles when it comes to out on track. But otherwise, fairly quiet down here in the pit lane, I have to say, and it's mild. I was expecting some chillier temperatures than this, I tell you. I'm going to have to put the puffers away.
You wait, Rosanna, you wait. In a few hours' time, you won't be saying that.
My teeth will be chattering.
Tonight is the coldest night of the weekend. It's supposed to get down to 2 degrees. Yeah.
Deary me,
have
and
to
that's
say-
going to be a real challenge
I
for,
have to say
for the drivers.
my hat's already been out today, but
You've not got much
I've got
protection up there,
excuses,
have you,
haven't
to
I?
keep you warm?
25 minutes and 50 seconds remain. It is indeed the team Mercedes who are up on top. Hamilton ahead of Russell. Then it's Magnussen actually on the soft tyre who's up there in third. Norris, Gasly, the top five. Rosanna, I believe you have a question.
I do have a question as Lewis Hamilton now heads out. So obviously those suspension changes all done, and off he goes with the medium tyre bolted on. My question is, when it is a little bit cooler, I guess they can obviously change the bodywork to get rid of those vents that we often see along the side, and that can obviously help with downforce. Is that correct, Alex? Would that be something that the teams may try to help with the setup of their cars this weekend, down to that kind of level of minutiae?
Yeah, quite a few of the teams have brought different floor fences, floor bodies as well. Majority have brought a different front wing, so a circuit-specific front wing to help the balance expected by the rear wing level. It's a low downforce track, but I think the hardest thing for the drivers out there, and I've talked about it already, is building up the tyre temperature. Certainly if the temperatures are going to be dropping down to 2 degrees, they've not raced anywhere this season with those temperatures that low, so it's going to be really tough for them to build temperature, but also to maintain the temperature as well. And certainly with that really long straight, we've seen a handful of drivers already with the DRS wide open down into turn 14. You're losing temperature just driving in a straight line for that period of time, and then as soon as you go to stamp on the brakes down into 14, you're either going to have a lock-up, or you're just going to manage it nicely with the tyres being at the correct temperature. But it's a real challenge for the drivers as George Russell makes his way on an outlap. So is Lewis Hamilton, both on the medium tyre, and Kevin Magnussen, he's just popped up into P3. He's on the soft tyre now, 3.5 tenths off Lewis Hamilton.
I had a lovely chat with Kevin Magnussen today in the Bellagio. Very nice suite we were in as he begins his triple header goodbye, really, to Haas and Formula One. We don't expect to see Kevin Magnussen back for next season, but we'll be able to listen to that interview later on this evening on 5 Live and in the Checkered Flag podcast. But he's not the only man to be bidding farewells. We now know pretty much the full grid. There's still the question of what on earth is going on at Red Bull and RB, still to be decided. But Sauber stroke Audi have now settled on their lineup. They are going with Nico Hülkenberg, and the current Formula 2 front runner leading the championship and a friend of the 5 Live coverage, Gabriel Bortoleto, has taken that seat. So we will lose Zhou Guanyu, who's had a very, very tricky season, and Valtteri Bottas, both off the grid. And respect every single Formula 1 driver, but Valtteri Bottas, that will be I think that will be a big miss on the grid next year.
He's a character, isn't he? He certainly is, and he was enjoying himself in the press conference yesterday. Did an Ironman just because he felt like it.
Yeah, but
in his
not just
house,
in his house.
which is just crazy. Someone asked, but why? Why did you do such a thing? And he said, well, I just wanted to be an Ironman, and I woke up that morning and thought, I'll be an Ironman then. He swam the length in his swimming pool, ran the marathon on his treadmill, and then used his bike. Obviously not in that order. I think they do the swim, the cycle, then the run, isn't it?
Cycle, run he did, I think, yeah, and documented it all on his Instagram. And he's doing this big thing about what's next at the moment. I think he's got it tattooed on him about what's next in his career, whether he leaves Formula One altogether. There are rumours surfing that he could well end up back at Mercedes as a reserve driver with it will be George Russell and Kimi Antonelli who will come into that team. But this is a nice signal as we're starting to get some more fast lap times come in, by the way. Leclerc's just put in a lap time on the soft tyre. We're expecting Leclerc and Ferrari to be strong once again here this weekend. Just shy of a tenth slower than Lewis Hamilton's fastest time. Hamilton set that on the medium. I haven't seen what he's got on the soft yet. Oscar Piastri's just coming across the line now, and Piastri, again, another example of a rookie coming in the last couple of years, lighting up the junior ladder into Formula One and really showing a force. Next year we're going to have Jack Doohan at Alpine, Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes, Bortoleto at Sauber, Behrman. I'm still going to call him a rookie, even though technically he's now not, because he's done too many races, subbing in for Ferrari and Haas. But he'll be on the grid as well. Liam Lawson, I think we can maybe call a little bit of at least a first full season this is an exciting time for Formula One to see all this young blood coming in ahead of a big regulation change as well. It's the new generation.
I'm a big fan for bringing in new drivers, in particular young drivers that have proven their credentials really in junior categories. Ollie Bearman has great success. All those drivers that you've just reeled off there, great success. And I'm going to add Liam Lawson to that. I would love to see him on the grid next year. I think he's been doing a good job. He did a good job jumping in for Daniel Ricciardo last season. I think he's doing a decent job jumping in after Daniel Ricciardo a few races ago. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it next year. We've got another yellow flag down in Sector 3, which is where Piastri is in now, and I'm guessing it's going to be someone's locked up down into turn 14, Andrew.
Yeah, so Lawson will be in F1 next year. I think we can say that pretty confidently. The only question is, which Red Bull car is he in? There's question marks about Sergio Perez still, and there's obviously still a seat to be confirmed at RB. So we don't know how that's going to unfold itself over the winter. I think he needs to prove that he can consistently beat Tsunoda, I think, to have a chance to be put in place of Perez. Then I think if they get rid of Perez, there's a question of what they do, because they presumably put Lawson alongside Verstappen. Good luck with that one, Liam. Then they need
best wishes, Andrew Benson.
Yeah, you'd need another driver.
Going to send a card as well.
Yeah, you need another driver in the RB, and there's been a few rumours around that. We'll have to see what happens.
Well, there is certainly a lot of news to get on with. It was Hamilton who ran deep at the end of that long back straight, and there is a lot of runoff there, so you can get yourself back onto the track nicely, but it does bring out the yellow flag, so it rather scuppers whoever is directly behind on that long back straight on their lap. Leclerc's on another fast lap. We were talking about Valtteri Bottas a moment ago. He got some bad news that he won't be on the grid next year, and Rosanna, I think he's got a little bit more bad news coming his way.
Yeah, talk about commentator's curse. He's got a grid drop for the Grand Prix. His car's been fitted with a new energy store, and that's out of regulation, so he's going to get a 5-place grid drop. But if you're a betting man in Las Vegas, I think you probably imagine he'd be on perhaps the back row anyway, so I'm not sure a 5-place grid drop's going to hurt him too much, but perhaps, this is a circuit where he's gone well. Maybe he'll be feeling really disappointed about that. But yeah, a grid drop for Bottas.
Yeah, well, he qualified 13th here last year. Of course, I think the car is a little bit worse than it was last season. But he had a great quali in those hectic conditions in Sao Paulo. Managed to line up just outside of the top 10. There were a few penalties on that front as well. But Valtteri Bottas able to at least try and get the most out of what Sauber are giving him for this season. Indeed, they have brought some upgrades here. Floor body, floor fences, floor edges, a new diffuser upgrade as well for the Sauber team, who have got a bit of a special tweaked livery along with a couple of other teams. Sauber have decided to adorn their green, or their fluoro green car, with some flames as well, as Zhou Guanyu pops up into 12th spot. That was the sound you just heard of Carlos Sainz making his way through in the other Ferrari. 8th place currently, but on a fast lap. We have got a yellow flag out in sectors 2 and 3. I think it might be Liam Lawson in the RB.
I just saw him lock up going down into, what's that, turn 12?
I think it was coming into turn 12. Yeah, he looks like he's got back going again. Just saw the Ferrari of Sainz and the Williams of Franco Colapinto racing it out through the final corner, which is pretty much flat out, especially once we get more and more grip on the track. It literally flies right past our commentary box. It's the part of the track that we can see, but you can barely see a car. You blink and you miss it, but they were going absolutely hammer for tong on that one, and Sainz ending up with the fastest lap overall. It's Ferrari 1-2 at the moment. Sainz 2/10 clear of his teammate Charles Leclerc. Then it's Hamilton and Russell, still with their times from the medium tyre, in 3rd and 4th. The two Haas cars, 5th and 6th. Hulkenberg ahead of Magnussen. Then comes Lando Norris, and it's Gasly, Bottas and Piastri, the top 10.
Sorry, Colapinto turning into turn 14 and was so close to the rear end, clipping the barrier on the outside. This is the replay of riding on board with Carlos Sainz, getting a really nice tow all the way down into the final corner, which is a flat-out left-hander, turn 17, pushing it all the way to the line as his brother has a shake of the head and a wave of the hand down in the Ferrari garage. It's only practice, but everyone likes to be at the top, even if it is.
A couple of fans from Argentina in the grandstand supporting Franco Colapinto. He certainly has garnered a lot of fans, not only within the paddock, but further afield as well. Andrew, will we see Franco Colapinto as a racing driver next year on the grid?
Doesn't look like it, but when I refer to rumours around RB and Red Bull, he is at the centre of those rumours. There's talk about Red Bull trying to get him out of his Williams contract and into the RB, which is obviously, or potentially anyway, it's obviously not great news for Sergio Perez, because that would suggest that scenario that I was painting a couple of minutes ago would come true, that Lawson would get the second Red Bull alongside Verstappen and Colapinto would go into the RB alongside Tsunoda. I haven't heard about that being resolved yet, but it's definitely been going on in the background for a while. So, as I say, we'll have to wait and see how that comes. There are no other seats available apart from that one on the grid next year, as you say. And I think if he doesn't get that seat, then Williams will hang on to him, and he'll still be their reserve driver, and then he'll look for a seat in Formula 1 the year after.
Of course, Colapinto makes way for Carlos Sainz, who signed a long-term deal with Williams, and Sainz will get his first taste of Williams machinery in the Abu Dhabi tyre test at the end of the season. So Ferrari allowing for a straight switch over there. Not the same for Lewis Hamilton, who goes to Ferrari. He won't get his first Ferrari run until next year, and most likely in an old car. Right, last 15 minutes of the session, 14 and a half minutes to be precise. We've just seen the McLarens coming back out for a run on the soft tyre. Lando Norris has now gone fastest, half a tenth clear of Charles Leclerc, Norris's fastest lap time, a 1:35.954, and some smiles from the McLaren garage watching on. Hashtag BBC F1 for those who are keen enough to be up at this time in the UK, and we know our friend Alpine, Amit, is a staunch listener to the coverage. One of the big bits of news that happened last week in the build-up to Vegas was all F1 teams have announced, or Formula 1 has announced, that we're going to do a joint unveiling in 2025 at London's O2. And Amit actually asks, well, what do we think of that? Are we looking forward to it?
I personally, I think it's great, as we hear from Verstappen.
Right, the wheel has this connection issue. Not about the radio went on by itself.
Understood, Max.
So an issue with the steering wheel. They will have some spare wheels, so that could just be a quick pit stop and a swap for Max Verstappen. But no, I like the idea. I think it's great for the fans. Max Verstappen wasn't so keen on the idea. He said, well, it's another day, another event for us to attend. But I think it's nice to have a big reveal of all the liveries in the same place instead of them sort of being spread out. I don't know what your thoughts on that, Andrew.
I'm a bit conflicted on it, but my opinion doesn't really matter. But I think that
of course it does.
I think Verstappen just doesn't like all that show busy stuff, the idea of him. I mean, obviously, I don't know what Red Bull are planning. I think other teams are planning their own launch in addition to the Formula 1 collective one.
Well, this mass unveiling is not going to be the actual cars, is it? It's just going to be literally a livery unveiling.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean,
I
hate sighing on air, by the way. I'm sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, I don't know. I put my name down for it anyway because I obviously got invited by Formula 1 a couple of weeks ago, and I put it down with a heavy heart, I have to be honest. It's late on a whatever night it is in London. Got to get home afterwards.
Did you get any plus ones? We'd like to go.
Yeah, I missed plus one. Has he not asked you?
Oh, no, I must have missed the invite. Rosanna, did you get an invite?
No, did not get an invite.
But are you up for that, the O2? And says we enter a generation of Formula 1 which is, all about the show. We're here in Las Vegas after all.
I'm always up for a bit of fun and a fiesta, but yeah, I think it's quite a good idea. It means you don't have to hot-foot it around the counties, the country and the world to see these launches if you're lucky enough to report on it.
I'm not sure it does mean that though, Rosanna, that's the thing. Really? No, I know at least one other team is doing their own launch.
So then maybe you are going to still have to hot-foot it.
I guess that's for the sponsors as well. They'll be doing their own launches, as Christian Horner looks a bit concerned on the pit wall, as Max Verstappen's in 6th place. Sergio Perez 1.1 second off, down in 10th. Lando Norris is still at the top of the times. Alex Albon's just popped up into the top 15. We're seeing quite a few drivers come out on the soft tyre now. I'm really interested to see Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Let's see if we get them out on the soft tyre, because and there, just as I say that, out comes George Russell on the soft, because they looked very handy on that medium tyre. The gap now is nearly a second for them to find, but the track is developing. The temperatures are dropping, which will make it trickier to build the temperature, but let's see what these Mercedes can do.
But also, in the case of Max Verstappen being 8 tenths off, I mean, he had his first couple of sectors were personal bests, and he climbs up to 6th. But something, the importance of a toe around here, especially on that back straight, that can really catapult you up the order if you catch a car and in the right place at the right time.
Exactly, and that's it, in the right place at the right time. If you're just a little bit too close towards the end of that straight as you hit the brakes into 14, you'll lose some of the downforce, and you'll then struggle to get the car turned in and get a decent exit and another flat out section through turn 17 to cross the line. So it's a bit of judgment, a little bit of luck thrown in there, as well as Carlos Sainz has just gone purple, so that's fastest of anybody in the first sector, but not had a very good middle sector at all. So he won't be improving his time unless he does a very impressive final sector, as everyone's jostling for position now. George Russell is letting a couple of cars through. Lando Norris is one of them, and then there's an Alpine approaching from behind as well, which he's decided, no, I'm going to keep you behind. I'm sure the Alpine won't be best pleased. It's Gasly actually on the soft tyre, as George now will come round to start his first flying lap on this soft tyre.
But he is giving Gasly a lovely toe to the line. Gasly almost pushing him down towards turn 1, but did get rather balked coming out of turn 14, and then it's almost quite a quick tight chicane through 15 and 16 that leads you down Harmon Avenue about a half a mile straight to the final corner of turn 17. This is the sound of George Russell, who's right in the wheel tracks of the McLaren of Lando Norris, who has also just got the Williams of Alex Albon up ahead of them. They're making their way through the slow 90-degree right-hander of turn 5. Then it arcs round through a long sweeping left turn, the sphere, to the inside of the track as they navigate their way through the tight and twisty turn 7 and 8. Keeps it nice and tidy. Not lighting up the timing screens, though, is George Russell in particular.
Well, listening to him there, I think that he's done an out lap, and now he's doing what you'd call a build lap. So just gently building up the temperature in the tyres, because if you go too quickly when the tyres aren't up to the temperature, you will get cold graining, and then it's really hard to try and get the tyre back, as he's weaving left to right. But again, you can't weave too aggressively or too much because it's so dusty offline, as the Mercedes team, pretty much most of them on that pit wall there. Andrew Chauvelin has got his woolly hat on as he stares down at the TV screens on the pit wall. But yeah, building up that temperature. So I'd be interested to see the different approaches from the teams, of whether they'll do an out, maybe even a couple of build laps, Harry, just to be safe.
Well, this will be really tricky for qualifying, won't it? Because you'll basically need to have enough fuel and keep life in the tyre, as you say, and not overdo it for your out lap, build lap, then your first flying lap, and then probably another one after that if you've still got the life.
I think it puts more pressure on the teams in terms of when they send their drivers out, because you can't say, right, there's 3 minutes left, out we go, because that's, if you do need to do an out and a build, you're not going to be setting a lap time, as Fernando Alonso pops into the top 10, his first proper run on the soft tyre, 136.6. We're back on board with George Russell, as he's done a personal best in the first sector. He's in the twistiest section of the track. He's on through 7, 8, 9 now. Squirt on the gas. He's got a little bit of traffic in front of him. One of the Red Bulls moves out the way, and then he'll feed through into turn 11. The car skips on the bumps into there. That McLaren is still in front of him. That is Lando Norris, who, remember, had a huge accident down at turn 11 last year, and then into the second DRS zone, back onto the strip, and he might get a little bit of a tow from Lando in front of him. He makes a few adjustments on his steering wheel and he will then hop onto the brakes. It must feel so long as he reaches over 200 mile an hour. He's going to get balked a little bit by Lando through there, gentle on the throttle. Is Lando going to peel into the pits? George is really going to get balked here. He's going to have to go down the inside of the McLaren, but still keeps it pinned as he crosses the line and goes 3/10 clear of Lando Norris.
Fastest of anybody in that final sector for George Russell, even with Lando Norris. Well, he was getting a lot of a tow, but then it's just how much does that hinder you eventually? But is there more time in the bank as well for Russell? 3/10 clear from Lando Norris. Then it's Charles Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri the top 5, Gasly, Verstappen, Alonso, Magnussen, Perez the top 10, Hamilton and Ocon both on outlaps at the moment, down in 11th and 12th. And it's Hulkenberg, Albon, Stroll is 15th ahead of Bottas, Colapinto 17th, Joe is 18th. The two RB cars down in 19th and 20th. Tsunoda in the pits, Lawson on an outlap at the moment. Kevin Magnussen is just making his way down that long back straight, down the Las Vegas Strip. The sparks flying from the underside of that Haas as he hits the brakes, turns into the left-hander of 14. Then it's a quick right-hand jump over the curb of 15, out through turn 16, half a mile down Harmon Avenue towards the left-hand kink, flat out almost in these conditions. The turn 17 zipped past our commentary boxes, and before you know it, you're back on the start, finish straight and hurtling down once again into the left-hander of turn 1. Magnussen currently down in 9th spot, didn't improve on that lap time around.
No, he will give it another go. As Albon, not personal best in the first sector, but he's done a much better middle sector compared to his previous. He's dropped a little bit down. He's down in 14th now. Lewis Hamilton, he's now approaching to start his first flying lap on this soft tyre. Heads through the turn 1. That's where we saw Fernando Alonso losing the rear of the car at the start of the race last year. DRS now wide open as he heads into turn 5. They'll brake just before the 100-metre board. DRS slams shut as he turns in. It's a 90 right-hand corner and gets nice and close to the outside, but he's up on George Russell already, Harry.
He certainly is, as he breaks it just under the sphere, which overhangs over this part of the circuit, and then he makes his way round to the left-hander of turn 9, down Sands Avenue, slightly off camber on the exit, through the right-hander of turn 10, then through 11, a left-hand kink that brings you nicely round towards turn 12, hits the brakes through the left-hander, set yourself up nicely, get as closest to the wall as you dare. Again, up on Russell's time in the middle sector, but only 18 thousandths of a second as he now hurtles down the Las Vegas Strip. 1.9 kilometers flat out, getting up to speeds eventually of 350 kilometers an hour being clocked here last year before you slam onto the brakes and put that car through the left-hander of 14, then the right-hander of 15, out through the left-hander of 16 and on to Harmon Avenue, down towards the start-finish straight. Again, these cars, some of them riding lower than others, indicated by the amount of sparks flying from the underside, and that was a good final sector from Lewis Hamilton. Fastest of anybody, goes fastest overall with 2.5 minutes left of FP1, the 10th and a half clear of his teammate Russell, but Russell is going again and going quickly too.
Yeah, he is, and because of these low temperatures, air temperature and track temperatures, and also it's low traction here as well, tyre stress is high, but the traction is not. It's almost, the drivers are able to do a cool lap and then go again, so the drop off on these tyres is not great. He's going to get is great, should I say. He's going to get a bit of a tow from Gasly, who's maybe going to try and say, well, yeah, you balked me, I'm going to balk you, but he goes back to the top of the times. And was that Lando Norris going through there? Looks like he's maybe on the medium tyre, so he's done his soft tyre running. There was a yellow flag out. Was it for Esteban Ocon, who is riding on Bullwood at the moment? Oh, and he was so close to hitting the rear of, I think that's Fernando Alonso.
Hey, I had to brake there.
He certainly did. He was turning in for the left-hander that leads you down the long back straight, turn 12, and Alonso then just quite slow right on the apex. And Ocon really had to bail out of it, hit the brakes, veer right. No damage done to either car, but you can hear Ocon's thoughts on the radio there. Again, another driver gearing up for his last 3 races with his current team, Alpine. What a way to do it with a podium as well, last time out, as we've discussed. But he will make his way to Haas next year, where he will line up alongside Oliver Bearman. Right now, though, Ocon down in 14th. He had a good run here last year, though, all the way to 4th.
Yeah, he certainly did. He avoided the carnage at the start that was set off by Fernando Alonso. Max Verstappen's just gone a little bit quicker. He's not quite broken out of the 136s, but it's close, a 136.038, but still a good chunk off, 7/10 off George Russell at the top of the time. So struggling, Red Bull. Perez is down in 10th, 1.1 off on the soft tyre, as Yuki Tsunoda is out at the moment, and he's down in 19th place, heads into turn 5 now. He's on the medium set of tyres, so they are yet to set a lap time on the softs, are the 2 RBs, and not looking great for them on the timing screen at the moment, as the checker flag is out. But Lewis Hamilton has just set a stonker of a first sector, 2/10 quicker than George Russell.
Yeah, Hamilton's looking quick. Tsunoda is out there on the medium tyre, by the way. Lawson is 20th and last, also on the medium. Both RBs struggled here last year as well. Tsunoda qualified plumb last. Don't you think a couple of revised liveries for this weekend, for those fans of a early noughties Sauber, looking very much like the RB of this weekend, with a bit of mixture of sort of pale blue and dark blue?
How many fans of the early naughty Sauber are there, do you think?
I'm counting at least 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About as many as there are people in the grandstand opposite us at the moment, I would say.
But it is a bit Sauber reminiscent, would you agree? There we go. Well, unfortunately, they're trailing around at the back right now, down in 19th and 20th. But it is only FP1, and the track conditions constantly improving. Hamilton is still out there, fastest of anybody in the first sector, fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Stroll's also doing a lap time, but it's not really worth noting. Norris out there as well, currently 3rd fastest. But it's Hamilton who currently looks like he's king of the Las Vegas Strip circuit at the end of FP1. Almost 4/10 clear of his teammate Russell as he takes the checkered flag.
Yeah, the Mercedes looking good. Hamilton was squirming the rear of the car, snaking all over the place on the brakes down into 14, but he managed to get it stopped and wasn't fastest of anybody in that final sector. George Russell still has that, but Mercedes are looking pretty handy at the moment at these early stages. Lando Norris will be smiling because he's going to be ahead of his championship rival, Max Verstappen, should I say. But he did say in the press conference he's just going to go out there and do the best job that he possibly can.
Certainly is. Well, that is the checkered flag out, done and dusted. The sphere is illuminated in red with the Mercedes logo adorned on it to indicate Mercedes 1 and 2 at the end of FP1. That's the first card laid down at the table. Can they carry it on, though, for the rest of this weekend? Let's just run you through the order then. Hamilton, Russell, Lando Norris finishing in 3rd, but was out there finding the limits of the track. This is the sound of Lando Norris hurtling his way down to the braking zone of turn 14, and then just locking up once again and almost having a little bit of a ding-dong with one of the Alpines coming through.
Yeah, all drivers are now making their way onto the grid. They're not allowed to do a practice start at the end of the pit lane this weekend, so as standard procedure anyway, they'll go onto the grid. As outside our commentary box window, we've got a great view of the cars going very slowly, lighting up the rear tyres, try and get a little bit more temperature into them for their practice starts. Max Verstappen just files through.
So the steering wheel sometimes randomly disconnects.
Copy that, Max.
So I'm guessing from that radio message that they haven't changed the steering wheel on Max Verstappen's car because he's still getting those issues. He's actually overshot his grid box as he pulls up to the number 1 spot. He goes into neutral, into first. He's then going to do his practice start. Very nice. Got off the line okay.
And off the line down to turn 1. Okay then, that's the end of FP1. Hamilton, Russell, Norris, Leclerc, Verstappen the top 5, Sainz, Alonso, Piastri, Gasly, Perez the top 10 ahead of Magnussen. Then it's Stroll, Albon, Ocon, Hulkenberg the top 15, Bottas, Colapinto, Joe is 18th ahead of Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. The 20 drivers to finish that session, and all fairly clean, Rosanna, down there for you in the pit lane, keeping a track of everything.
It's always clean down here in the pit lane, Harry. Yeah, just a couple of teething issues, weren't there, for the likes of Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen. But a bit of time now for them to get on top of those ahead of FP2. Just to let you know, the temperature has dropped a couple of degrees during that session. Started at 11, now it's down to 9, and we're expecting it to get down to 7 degrees for the second practice session. So another challenge coming the teams and drivers' way, and another challenge for me as well. Better put another layer on, I think, Harry.
Oh, I think so. We might be joining you on that front. Well, we've got a little bit of a gap now. You can join us for FP2 on 5 Sports Extra from 5 to 6 in the morning. So get yourself a power nap. We're going to go off and grab a bite to eat. So my thanks to Rosanna Tennant in the pit lane, Andrew Benson, to Alice Powell, and I suppose to myself, Harry Benjamin, as well. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. And at the end of free practice 1, it's advantage Mercedes, Hamilton ahead of Russell.